Welcome, episode 4. We're joined by Frankie from the Kitchen Detox. I'm going to hand it straight over. I want you to introduce you and your mission and what you do.
Yeah. So hello, everyone. I'm Frankie, probably already recognised behind the hashtag Frankie, I love your balls. And I am the face behind the Kitchen Detox. So just making a healthy lifestyle easy and accessible. From a very humble background, but we'll get into that later. Part of what I want to do is just share how to make healthy living easy to everybody.
Fantastic. So if you wouldn't mind touching kind of how did you get from your kind of background into where you are now? What were you doing before this? And then that kind of journey led into the Kitchen Detox.
Yeah, so it's kind of a lot of different elements that came into my life. So my own health journey has had a massive impact. So I have always suffered with a very rare thyroid disorder, in that most people who have a thyroid condition are suffering with an autoimmune condition, so Graves' or Hashimoto's. Both of those are, when you're suffering with the symptoms, they're life-altering. But mine is partially formed and it's ectopic. So the success that I've seen and sort of helped other people with, I couldn't necessarily apply to myself. I've had a lot of success and greatly reduced my medication through all of the things that I've learned in my own journey. But yes, it's been quite the in-depth struggle. And then on top of that, I've had a gallbladder removal, which often does go hand in hand. Looking at the masses who have a thyroid disorder, a lot of times it has a knock-on effect to your digestive system, and its gallbladder removal cases are quite high in people with thyroid conditions. So yes, both of those things have impacted my journey quite a lot, as well as my parents. I've had quite opposite parents who separated when I was very young, but my mum was quite a holistic kind of health orientated mother. She always loved essential oils. She was born in India, so a lot of home cooking. And my dad was typical bachelor, loved his exercise, but had what I would call the beige food diet. And I also, initially, my career was in education. So I was in education for sort of 14 years and still absolutely love the younger generation and love working with kids. Yeah. But I saw that there was such a need and such a gap in this vital area of good nutrition. And as I learned more in my own health journey, I just became more and more passionate about this topic, and I just had a hunger for it. And I would talk to parents at the school that I worked in last, which was a school for children with behavioural needs and different, they were all on kind of the SEN register. And I saw this deep connection that does start in the gut. We're all talking about gut health, but it has such an almighty effect especially with children and behavior issues and things like that. And I've seen it in my own kids. And I was having these like little sneaky conversations with parents that I shouldn't have been having at the time at all, and saying, just try cutting out sugar and going for the natural alternatives. There's so many things out there. And the few parents that started to implement these things, there were wild changes, like children who were really high up on the autistic spectrum, who could not sit through lessons and, literally assaulting teachers and staff members. They were sitting through entire classes, and it was just unheard of. So yeah, the things that we can do, small things really, can have huge effects. And it's those little things. That's what the Kitchen Detox is all about. When I bit the bullet and decided to go self-employed and really kind of plunge into this, I knew that I wanted it to be accessible to everybody, and break that stigma of, healthy living is for the rich, and the fast food diets and, high sugar diets are reserved for those in poverty, because let's face it, those snacks are cheap. And, I just wanted to try and target that area as much as possible. And it's those things that can be done cost effectively. The sugar, the cooking oils, gluten is another huge one that I'm very passionate about. There's so many things that you can do on a budget to create huge changes.
And interjecting, but sugar is one of those things. It is very difficult. I'm talking about bread. But actually, a little confession, but I didn't eat it, so it was good. I just come from training a Keep Fit, it's called, class from an elderly retirement home, and I go in and I set up chairs and I keep them fit. At the end, I was explaining, I'm doing a podcast in a minute. Like, first of all, what's a podcast? But second of all, I said nutrition and so on, and we're gonna talk about sugars and so on. And just as I was leaving, I was setting up for a Jubilee party for the weekend, and they were like, "Here, have a cake." I was like, I can't eat that now because Frankie's going to tell me off.
Bless you.
I'm
glad I was your inspiration to say no to a good old Victoria sponge.
The little voice was in my head. Everyone has that, I hope. Anyway, everyone has that. But it was.
I'm going to be the voice in your head, am I? Oh.
Don't eat it. And I am trying, sometimes bread again is that staple. It's very difficult to cut out, isn't it? Because it is convenient,
and it's so enjoyable. That's also what I want to still emphasize to people, is that enjoying your food is so important. And if bread is something that you love, so many of us do, if you're having a soup, everybody wants that nice bit of crusty bread to go with it. But make it a sourdough. There's things that I just want to tell people that are just equally as yummy. And it's breaking that mental block that we have. But so many people have it on different things. It could be that, oh, no, I could never get rid of bread. Or, no, I have to have that dessert that I've had for the last 30 years or whatever on a Sunday afternoon, because it's just part of my routine. And I don't want people to lose those things. I just want to show them a better way of doing it.
And actually, how you were talking about speaking to people, whether it's in the school pickups and playgrounds, and that's actually quite a nice way of talking to people, because we had this in a podcast the other week, talking about, me and Gareth, all the information out there. There is so much. It's all online. Personal trainers and nutritionists can't be expected to know everything. People will come to you with tons of information that they're ready to come at you with lots of questions, but actually getting people together just to talk about this subject, like you're doing, little snippets and small wins, is really the way forward. And I think that's a nice way of you, probably niche. I know you were sneaking it in, but it's a nice way of it's a nice way of you growing your business naturally.
Yeah. Well, I was just very aware that at the time, I hadn't delved into becoming qualified, and I was so passionate about it that I wanted to share. But it was just, I was at that dodgy time where I was like, actually, I'm not qualified to give this advice, but I know it works. just try this. But but it's lovely now. Now I still have those conversations, and I'll still meet with mums and friends and people that have got children or there's so many people that are from a wide variety of backgrounds, and the conversations often start naturally, like you say, on the school run, or I'll be at an event somewhere and
you don't just knock a chocolate bar out of their hand. Don't eat that. Have this.
I'll be at the gym, someone's got some shake in their hand. Yeah, I'll just replace it with one of my energy balls.
And, we digress. We'll come back to path, but it's interesting, isn't it? Because there's so much. Probably about a year ago, protein just hit into the industry, didn't it? Protein everything, protein cheese, protein Mars bars. What is a protein?
Have you? Oh my God, that is one I looked at the other day. Actually, have you tried that protein cheese?
I have, yeah.
Oh, it's bad. it's not nice at all.
But it's the sell point, isn't it? We're going to come back to that because I've got an interesting question actually about kind of family nutrition and to talk about a program. So if I forget, come back to me and ask me that. But what I wanted to kind of touch on is the word. There's lots of trending words, but the word well-being seems to be rocketing in the industry at the moment. What does it kind of mean to you, that word?
Yes. So I did actually write a couple of notes on this because it's such a huge thing, isn't it? It's like this overarching umbrella that covers so many people, the PTs, the nutritionists, the dietitians, functional medicine doctors. We all love to use this term, but actually, what does it mean? And I was looking at kind of all the categories that come under, and some people do up to sort of 12 categories that come under this heading well-being. But I think as many as 6 is probably what I would focus on. So for me, those are physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, social, and your environment.
Okay.
And also it's remembering that well-being, having a total well-being is probably near on impossible. But to remember that you are so individual, to tailor it to you, and to just strive to look at each of those different things that I've just said and try and do your best in each one of those areas. And it's an active pursuit. That's something I heard recently that I really love. Nice. It's an active pursuit. You're doing it all of the time. It's like the pursuit for happiness. Like we've just got to work on well-being every day. Like wake up in the morning, start again. What are the things that work for you, that you have in your environment that make you feel better? What foods, are there trigger foods for you? Are there things that you already know make you feel really cruddy that you just have to get rid of? And find your staples, again, making those healthy swaps.
And actually just doing things I've always learned, 30 minutes after eating something, maybe 20, depends how fast you process it, you'll feel the effects of what that food's done.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a good rule. It's a good rule. As soon as you're eating something, actually probably wasn't the best thing for me.
Yeah.
And you're super hungry, or it's crashed you, it's sustained you, it's probably a good thing to eat.
Yeah. But we're living in a world that it's always going to be hard to have a totally stress-free. It's impossible, isn't it? No one's got a stress-free life. There are stresses everywhere, and we're living in a world where our economy is, getting worse and worse by the second. So people have got rising financial worries. But it's teaching ourselves how to manage that stress.
You're right.
Our bodies don't kind of deteriorate with it. Do you know what I mean?
I got stuck by a Honda Jazz on the way up here, and that always irritates me. But then I'm actually secretly, even though I'm like, I've got a podcast, I've got to get to it. But then I realized actually I want to be that person in the Honda Jazz because they're just super chilled out.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've got no worries.
Yeah. It doesn't matter that Simon's behind them going, you.
I was driving the speed
Flicking
limit.
him the bee.
I kept a safe braking distance. All right.
Okay, good stuff.
So I think that's good takeaway. I think you're right. People's well-being, everyone's different. There's tons of different stresses. Naturally, people have got more than others, depending on lots of different factors, whether they, from family, work life, their own personal life, daily routines, what their habits are, and especially the most important thing is what they're eating.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's little things that I do that I know, I mean, it's half term, children are at home. But no, I know that even that, sometimes you get parents that have got, I met a family at the weekend who had 5 children. I was thinking, there's always someone worse off than me. But no, they were the most amazing family. And actually you see things from a whole new perspective, like the kids helping each other. The more you have, like, there's this tiny little baby in the corner who's like, car seat that it's in is being used as a coffee table. Just literally in a world of its own, happy because it's the 5th child of the family, and it's that one's going to have to fend for itself.
I've got a Zoom client that uses still their spin bike as their little hanging there washing up, and when I zoom into them I say, still a washing line, have you used it yet? What I wanted, funny enough, I'm going to talk about that point so I don't forget it, but there was a program I watched on TV, and I'm not going to name it, but it was interesting because it was talking about family. I don't know if you caught it, it was last couple of weeks, but it was about a family, I think it was 4 or 5 people, but they were spending about £300 to £400 a week on food. Wow. This guy come in, and it's difficult with catching, I suppose, media. It's not always about the healthy alternatives. Sometimes it's about the cheapest alternatives when they put these programs on. And it was a little bit interesting because some of the times, not that the kids were brought up in this way of being not quite selfish, but they got everything they wanted, top prices, that they couldn't figure out why their kids were putting on weight, and they've got this pantry just full of everything. The kids would just go in and access what they wanted throughout the whole day. Wow. But the program, which really irritated me a little bit, but it just focused on it throughout. For example, it put in salsa dips, and it threw out different supermarkets, I won't name them, but from the cheapest end of supermarkets to the higher end. And it was a taste test, a blind taste, just test which ones they like. And the lower end supermarket come out at the end because it was 33p or something per 100 grams. And it was like, what irritated me was that, and this is the key about nutrition, isn't it? Even though the taste might have been better, it was a cheaper product, but it's the case of what's on the back of that ingredient. It's all the other stuff that goes into that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that was the thing. It was families on a budget. And that's one of our questions we'll talk about a bit later on. But in fact, we can skip to it now because it's while we're on it. But I think it is that you brought it up at the start of this, it's not for the rich. It's for, and for me, it was a case of this salsa dip, going back to it, is make your own, with the family. But because they'd set that precedent for the kids, they were quite selfish. Try this, don't like it, don't want it. It's that attitude.
Yeah, you're then setting a precedence for each generation, aren't you? And that is very much what's happened to society over the years. And there's so many layers to this, because where does it start? Does it start in the advertising? Does it start in the layout of the supermarket? Yeah. Does it start with the parenting of, however many generations back? But now we've got these programs on the TV, and they have catered to the needs of the children of that family, which are, again, their taste buds haven't fully developed. With every bit of processed rubbish that goes into little mouths, their taste buds will adapt, and they're adapting towards the flavors and the food choices that are essentially being created in a lab to keep us addicted. And it is so painful to watch. And even with my own children, you know, I'm so passionate about this topic, but I have to constantly come against what is being put out there for their hungry eyes to, you know, just get sucked in. They're totally absorbed by these people that come on with the Monster energy drinks with all their flamboyant colours and their wild claims, and like you said, with the protein powders, people will just fill these things with absolute junk in order to make a sale, and they will give you all of the fancy lines and all of the weight loss claims, or all of the you will feel amazing kind of, well, you might for 2 minutes, but the crash you get afterwards is going to be pretty hefty. But that's not enough to put people off, because the addiction started. And when I say these things are created in labs, it's you get people in white coats, you know, addiction specialists, getting the right amount of salt, sugar, fat, and there'll be awful, horrible fats to produce that exact sweet spot, the bit that we go, oh yeah, I want a bit more of that. And the crisps that are full of MSG, that, you know, what was the classic line of Pringles, once you pop you can't stop. We know that's true, because someone has been very good at designing that little curved crisp. But yeah, going back to what you were saying, it's just such a shame that is the way the world's going. Yes, families must live to their means, but it's not about going for the cheapest alternative in anything just because it's cheap. You obviously still have to take into consideration what that is, and whether you are having to grow your own. Focus on, when I say to people go shopping and try and buy things organically, there are things that you can still buy, which organic kind of replica, however you want to say it, you can buy bananas cheaply, organically, just the same as you can normal bananas. And some people might argue, well, bananas are up in a tree, how much can actually get into them and stuff like that. So I say focus on the dirty dozen, which is, you know, often working with seasons as well. What's the most heavily sprayed crop at the moment? If you absolutely can't afford to buy even those things organically, use bicarbonate of soda in water, wash everything within an inch of their life before you cook it, and just remove some of those harmful things. And there are so many things that you can do if you were on a budget to make this work for you. And that doesn't mean, you know, chuck out the like hummus that's good for you and replace it for something else that's packed full of like loads of vegetable oil and hot nasties just because it's cheaper.
And I think I think people who've got large families and so on, they automatically go to kind of staples like pasta, you know, bulk buy pasta. You know, to whether they make a bolognese, but it's something they can pre-cook to make that's very easy. Is there any kind of things that come to mind? And it might be something that we don't cover right now, but it's something we could maybe post at the back end when I put this editing together. We can throw in certain recipes, but is there anything that comes to mind, you know, say a big family of 5-6 people that they could kind of throw together that you might do, for example?
So
it's a big question. I appreciate
it is. Yeah. I mean, I throw together stuff all the time that is just they're like frying pan staples, and I'll use eggs, a load of vegetables, some really good quality seasonings, and I'll mix it up with either fish or whatever my children's go-to protein is that day, that I will, and that's so cheap. It's so cheap, but I can really work with things to make them delicious. And that's what I encourage people to do. But when you say staples, if I was going to say to anyone, incorporate this and it will make a world of difference, bone broth. You can go to your butchers, or even look online at your local organic farm or whatever place it might be. Bone broth and organ meats are some of the most cheaply found things, and yet they are so powerful. And I make up bone broth at home. It'll sit in the fridge for the week, used over the week, and I can put it into soups. I can, put a bit in when I'm frying anything up. Even if I'm cooking a bolognese, I might put a bit in, because it's full of so many nutrients and collagen. It supports your gut, and if you can get that into your children in whatever meal you're cooking, amazing.
That's a really nice takeaway, actually. That's I think that's really good advice. So I lined you up for this, but what's kind of and I'm sure people want to know, but hence me just about to what I'm about to say, but what is in your balls?
What is in my balls? Some of the best supplements that I have used, I call them supplements because they are essentially not the kind of pill form, but I push collagen as much as I possibly can, because again, it's fantastic for your gut lining. People think collagen, they think skin, hair and nails. Yes, but that's almost like a counter effect. It starts within it. If you can get all three types of collagen, you're talking connective tissue, gut lining. So, a lot of what we are made up of internally is supported by collagen. So very early on, I found a company that I loved, who I won't name. Well, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to, but I started getting their powders because, one, they contained all three types of collagen. Two, they didn't use any nasty sweeteners or fillers or any of those things that you find in so many powders, like we were just talking about.
We can make reference to it, actually, so you're more than welcome. Who is it? Who are you?
Oh, lovely. So the company's called K-Gen.
Okay.
So I don't actually affiliate with them in any way, or they're not kind of my sponsor or anything, but I've made it very clear early on.
I thought you were going to go, I love your and I was going to edit the video. Okay.
So yes, they've been amazing in creating these powders. And so the first few flavors of superfood ball that I made at home were the gooey chocolate collagen and the salted caramel collagen. And the flavor is just incredible. You feel like you're eating a cake. My kids love them. So that's where it all started. I was making these snacks at home for my kids. I was fed up, like so many parents probably are, of them having even sort of protein supplement, or not protein supplements, but fairly clean. Sorry, that's really annoying. I've just had
an
ping.
Don't go, it's fine. We're back. Hello.
We're back. They were having sort of snack bars that early on in my nutrition journey, I thought, oh, well, they look fairly good. Again, they had all the lovely claims on the packaging, no sugar, but actually they were using a really nasty sweetener. And I was so fed up of that yo-yo effect. My kids were having a snack and it was almost heightening their need for more. Yeah. Even without the supposed sugar element, it was like, oh, we've had this. 5 seconds later, we're back for something else. And it's the absence of healthy fats as well that you often find that it's at ground zero in these bars, or kind kind of similar products. So I made these at home. I saw that they were having great success with my kids, and for me as well, it was just an easy grab and go. If I was making dinner for the kids, I find that's often my hungry time, is like just post school run, and I'm just about to start cooking the dinner, and I'm like, oh, I'm famished. And it would be a really easy thing for me to just crack open like a bag of kettle chips or something, if I had that in my home, and eat a lot at that point. It's like, that's my real hungry time. And the energy balls or superfood balls, whatever you want to call them, they just diminished that completely. And I'd only have to have one.
And
so
I can promote and recommend this, because you gave me some samples, which I had the day, and it was brilliant. Loved them. Yeah, and you're right, because I am one of those people sometimes, I burn through calories, and then sometimes I just need a little bit of a hit to keep moving. And those, sustained it 30 minutes after eating it, or pretty much more instantly, but it was good. And I've also just made reference to the chocolate ones you just mentioned, because that's my go-to thing in the evening.
If
I know it's a healthy alternative.
And it's, so I use raw cacao as well, so really high in antioxidants, but you don't get the sugar elements. It's completely sugar-free. So so you get the combination of healthy fats, a good source of collagen or protein, and then I put a post out quite early on just saying, does anyone want the recipe? Or and this was in the height of lockdown, and I just got this influx of just friends saying, oh, can you, I don't, they sound amazing, but I'm either, I don't have a blender, or I just don't have the time. So I was just dropping tiny little samples or jars outside people's doors, and it went from there. And amazing, because it is, it's such a big part of my business now, and I supply to cafes and obviously a local clinic, the Mass Clinic, who I absolutely adore. They have my products as well. So it's opened doors for me, and it's also just getting healthy food into people, which I love.
Great. And that's what I like about them, and they're so, it's easy. And I think reference to what you said about the other bars that are out there, again, not naming and shaming, but I think I had one. It was a few months back, I was picked up, and it was a vegan bar, and I'm chewing this thing like a camel, and it was so my mouth was dry. It was horrible. It was horrible. I was like, what am I eating? It's like cardboard with just nothing. And I think that's the problem, is that people's mindset straight away is they also go, well, I'm not eating that again. And then it puts them off that kind of health orientated kick, and they think, well, everything's going to taste like that. They go back to what's easy. Coming back on to some of the questions, you touched on it with what you concentrate on, but for some people, gut health, unless they Google it and get 9 different explanations of what that is, what's your kind of, what's your take on it? How do you explain it to people? What is it?
So so many things start in the gut. There is a huge brain and gut connection. It's amazing to know that when you are growing in the womb, the same tissue that forms your gut also forms the brain. So that, people call it the second stomach, and that is the reason. There is such a powerful connection there. And gut health, there's so many indicators in our body if our gut health is off. So that could be inflammation anywhere, poor skin, psoriasis, eczema, all of those things. Immune health starts in the gut. And it's, again, it's like I was saying with the term wellness, it's so hard to get gut health completely spot on for your individual needs and your body. Like for me personally, I know that my gut health took a huge hit as soon as I lost my gallbladder, and had I have known what I'd have what I now know,
Mm.
I would have gone as far as to never have my gallbladder taken out. I'd have done what I know now, the strategies to really support yourself and try and get rid of a lot of those stones that form. And knowledge is power, isn't it? And there's so many things you can do, but there's a really lovely sentence actually that I was looking at when you think about gut health. And a healthy gut contains healthy bacteria and immune cells that ward off infections like bacteria, viruses, and fungi. A healthy gut also communicates with the brain, like I was just saying, through nerves and hormones, which help maintain general health and well-being. And there's so many things that affect, I mean, this prevalence of vegan diets has had a massive kind of impact on gut health. And that's a lot of the problems that I see at the moment, I often feel are connected to those who are, for whatever reason, for animal welfare or just lots of other elements, or just because it's the trending thing for people to be vegan. Those are the people that are suffering the most at the moment. And I think that's because, one, a lot of the vegan products are just packed full of soy. That's, and it's that wreaks havoc for us ladies. It's called an endocrine disruptor because it has such a huge effect on estrogen levels. And, I won't go into too much of that, but it's incredibly hard in this day and age with, like I say again, with all of the advertising and the push for veganism and everything to get gut health spot on. But you've got to think about it from an individual point of view. What conditions do you have already? Key supplementation, not just taking every supplement under the sun that you might not necessarily be deficient in, because again, those things, you can take them if your gut health is off, you're totally not absorbing the right amount of vital nutrients anyway. But
and what exception to there's a couple of things there to inject Luke, who was on the previous podcast, we were talking about testing, and I think you talked about supplements. And there is that promotion of going, well, I should take more vitamin D, C, but there is a point where people will be taking too much or ODing on too much of these things. And I think it's a natural thing for people more to go off and now get more testing, whether it's just getting a blood test to find out what their levels are, because people just don't know. It's worst thing is just injecting yourself with too much supplements and just find out the basics. Give yourself a little
absolutely
test. I think people think, and it may be a little bit of both ends, but going to a GP is more like, there has to be something wrong with me before I go to the GP. And I know that, that's there is a lot going on there, but actually naturally for people to go along and get a blood test, some kind can be a bit hard to do, because
absolutely,
they'll
and
ask you
even myself, I know that I've got my first appointment. This is obviously indicating the huge pressures on the NHS at the moment, but I'm waiting another 3 months to see a specialist in the endocrine team, and that's for my thyroid condition. I was officially diagnosed when I was 11 years old, but they assumed that my thyroid condition started from birth. However, I haven't seen a specialist since I was 11 years old. And the last scan I had on my thyroid, and this happens all the time, I get people screaming at me going, not only is your thyroid partially formed, it's sat in the wrong place, you need to be seen by a specialist. And I'll sit there and I'll go, I know. And but then I'm up against so many loggerheads, and it's the same. I think it's the same for everybody. I feel like I'm then telling them, I've learned so much about my unique condition. I'm like, right, I need this blood test, this blood test, this blood test. I need my not just my TSH, which is the standard thyroid blood test, which they give to everybody, that just doesn't tell you one iota about your thyroid health, really. You need your T4, your T3, reverse T3. There's so many blood tests that give you your full thyroid panel. But to get that is like trying to just wade through mud. You cannot get there with ease at all.
And I think that the way forward, Luke mentioned this, I think it's going to be the way the future goes. I think, already, it's quite nice to, not that people can cipher through having their blood test, through the patient app on your phone. You can get them to look at them themselves, and you're looking whether you're in a black line or if you've got a red dot, and you're searching through to see it, and then you're like, well, I don't know what any of these mean, but I haven't got a red dot on my bloods. And then you can go off. But that is still a good, a good heading. And I think the way that it's going to move, I think there's going to be more testing for people naturally to go and get more of these things.
And
great.
If you are in that position where you've been battling an autoimmune condition for most of your life, if you are suffering with diabetes, or you've got a life-altering condition, by all means, if you've got access to someone who is doing the biohacking, the real sciencey stuff, grab hold of it and get all of those blood tests that you can. There are really cool things out there now, like breath monitors, which can indicate certain things. And actually, I'm just looking at a company that offers that I could eventually, after my next bit of training, incorporate into what I offer my clients, because it does make it slightly more tailored. And I think that is important. But there are, going back to the supplementation side of things, there are definite sort of I don't know what you would call it, like a baseline or key supplements that everybody is deficient in. I don't care who you are. Magnesium is responsible for over 400 processes within the body. Our soil is just completely depleted of magnesium over the years. That is just, sadly, in our country anyway, the quality of our soil.
Can I ask, what if someone was lacking in that, what would be signs and symptoms of someone potentially having?
There's so many, like I say, because it's responsible for so many processes within the body. It's like saying, how do you know if you're deficient in vitamin D? Yes, there'll be certain symptoms, but I would just assume that you are if you live in England. And I go as far as to, with omega-3, vitamin D and magnesium, I would be classed as mega dosing those things. And I believe that it's completely safe, and it is so much more effective than taking the dose that's recommended on the bottle. But that's just me. And with all the research and studying that I've done, I know that because I don't have a gallbladder, that's my body certainly needs more, because I'm absorbing a lot less anyway. There's definitely ones that I would say to start with for people. Like, if you're just going to supplement with something, have it be these, and then go from there. Get the blood test to see what you're deficient in. If you're still suffering after incorporating, the foundational ones, then just look at going to the next stage. And the next stage it's a process. And I know everybody's in such a hurry to feel well. But again, going back to the kitchen detox, that's what I'm like, the beginning of the process. So I will look at what someone's conditions are already, their medical conditions and history, what environment they have, how much stress they have in their life, what their sleeping patterns are like, how much quality sleep they're actually getting, and work from there. And I'll always say, look at your sugar intake. So eliminate sugar, basically, eliminate gluten, incorporate fasting. That will then hopefully have a knock-on effect to your sleep anyway, but sleep is the next vital thing. Hydration and foundational supplements. And then going from there, you know, after that, I still keep in contact with everybody that I've seen. But if you're still suffering, it's like, then what do you do next? And where do you go from there? And I then talk about the next bit. And then the biohacking comes in a little bit further on, I feel.
Great.
Because everybody wants their health to be in the best place possible. And I genuinely think the stuff that I start with has huge impacts and is miles away from living a processed, you know, high sugar diet anyway. But it's what stage you're at as well. Finances, of course, come into this. And I've been there. I'm a single mum. I definitely lived on the breadline. I know what it's like to not know if you can afford your food shopping the next week. And now my work is taking me into, you know, social circles who can literally buy what they want when they want and don't have a money worry in the world. And of course, they could go off and pay £400 to have blood tests that we would all love to be accessible on the NHS, but definitely aren't. But yeah, it's, and I really want to make the difference to people who are in these poorer areas of life, because I know what that's like. So,
and I think it's perfect timing more now than ever with being hounded by expenses and so on. So I think it's a perfect time for you to mention that. And I think you mentioned it, you know, just then, it's everyone wants to get healthy very quickly. And it's always come up with this analogy. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon, you know. It is a journey. Yeah. You're going to have to experience it as you go through step by step. You're going to come up with, hence the pun, you're going to come up with hurdles, but you just have to figure ways. And I do this a little bit with NLP, but if you're not ready for the hurdles coming up, that's when you're going to set yourself back and maybe fly off the radar. If you can prepare yourself that you know what's coming, you can always make a contingency plan to get back on track.
Yeah, exactly. And I do always I go in sort of almost putting somebody off. Well, it seems like I am, because I really feel like it's fair to pre-warn people. You're going to feel really, really quite crappy when you first cut out sugar and gluten. And, you know, but again, I've been there and done it. And I'm talking from experience. It is like a class A drug. Sugar is the most accessible drug. And, you know, we feed it to our kids. But when you come off, you really realize that it's obviously been doing so much damage, because you feel like you have got the world's worst hangover for, 2-3 weeks, depending on how much sugar you've had on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But once it's gone, it's like the fog lifts, literally, like the fog just clears and you feel like you've got a new lease of life. And then it's about slowly reintroducing the things to still have enjoyment. No one wants to live, on vegetables and chicken and, just the, bodybuilder diet kind of thing. And that's why people end up yo-yoing. Yeah. Boring, tasteless food. Nobody wants that. Yeah. If food is fuel. Everyone loves to say that, don't they? Food is fuel. And I've said it a few times myself. Yes, food is fuel, but you don't want that shovel it in mentality. It's like, it's just a horrible experience.
you touched on the word fasting. Luke also did the same. I explained a scenario to him. Same really question as above. For people listening, what is it? Why should people be interested in it? Should people be doing it? What's your views?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, people should be. So because of our high sugar, high processed diets, a lot of people, in the same way that we're all deficient in these things, most of us suffer with insulin resistance. And people often go like, what? No, that's for diabetes sufferers, and like they'll think insulin and they won't think of the insulin that we actually have in our own bodies. They'll think of the medicinal form of insulin that's given to people with type 1. That's just the association people make. But when you can get insulin to work for you in your body the way that it's supposed to, that's when you're firing on all cylinders. It's brilliant. Insulin is there to serve a purpose, and that is to keep your blood sugar levels stable and to stop you having this yo-yo effect all day. And the high sugar, high processed diet that most of us have filled our lives with has left us with this symptom, and fasting is what has the most powerful effect on reprogramming that. And it's going back to how our ancestors lived in times of feeding and times of fasting. And breakfast, you're literally breaking your fast. And some people that I see already don't like having breakfast super early. I've always felt that myself. It makes me a little bit kind of, my tummy's not quite ready for food first thing in the morning. And if you are one of those people, then great, you are probably already doing a form of intermittent fasting, because if your breakfast is pushed forward to 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, then you've already fasted from hopefully no later than 8 o'clock the night before to 11 o'clock the next day. You're getting a huge chunk of time where your body's been able to kind of go back to base level.
We were always we talked about old education, but always breakfast your most important meal of the day. You must have it.
But people then associate that with having to put something in their mouth first thing in the morning. But it's not. Breakfast, yes, it's the most important meal of the day. I completely agree with that, because and I personally eat in the style of eat breakfast like a pauper, and eat breakfast like a king and dinner like a pauper, because you want to start that day, your body is going to go, because it's the most insulin sensitive. You've had that time where you've been fasting overnight, and anything you eat is going to set you up. Your body is then primed, ready for the day ahead. And you either can prime it with a horrible, high sugar breakfast cereal or something, and then you will be hungry half an hour later, and you'll probably snack all day and your body's going like this. Or you can have some real lovely, fats for breakfast, like an avocado and egg and all those things that we know are really balancing on your body. So which
you always want to put on toast. Okay,
have it on sourdough. Amazing.
See, I threw that in there. But is there any times where you think people shouldn't be fasting? That your opinion?
I think for women, I think if you're aggressively fasting, I think, some people do incorporate like a weekly 24-hour fast. It depends how insulin resistant you've become, how, if you're really quite overweight and your body's got some reserves, fasting is going to do huge things for you, and to get your hunger in check, and you'll help you get your portion sizes right and everything. And yeah, I think people can take it to the extreme, definitely. And especially for women, it can impact our hormones if we're trying to really aggressively fast, say the week before our period or the week before ovulation. That's something else actually that I really try and get women who are still in their kind of cyclical years, that they should be tracking their cycle, because that week before your monthly, the week before bleed week, you are gonna feel like everything you have done is working against you. You're gonna feel like I had a phone call from my friend, sorry, this is completely off topic, I know, but I had a phone call from a really close friend of mine, and it really resonated with me, because she phoned me up and she was almost in tears. Like, she had a kitchen detox, she had my full kitchen detox, and felt huge effects from it. But she was like, even after everything that I've implemented and how good I feel and all the compliments that I've been receiving from all of my friends and family, I seem to get to these points in the month where it's almost like body dysmorphia. And I will look at myself and I'll literally I'll be finding the fat. I'll be feeling constantly hungry, and everything just goes out the window. And I'm like, yeah. And that even happens to me. And I now know why, but I can completely relate to that. And it just so happens, it's part and parcel with having hormones.
Yeah.
But it's so important for women to just get that in check before your bleed week and before the week that you're ovulating. There is so much more demand on your body. You're going to feel more hungry because your body's requiring more calories for these vital processes that are happening inside you. You might feel a bit bloated because obviously that's a symptom. It literally has an overall effect on how you feel and sometimes how you look. But it's being kind to yourself and accepting that and thinking, right, if I've been getting everything right for the last couple of weeks, just be kind to yourself. Just have a long bath. Don't fast aggressively. Have more calories than you usually would, and be at peace with it.
And you've just nailed a couple of things there, because I think it was on BBC News 2 days ago, but Jessica Ennis, the hurdlist, she's put together an app, and she was talking about actually when she was training for Olympics, she had no idea what cycle she was on. Even then, this is Olympic, with Olympic coaching. And I think if PTs are listening to this, it is interesting with a male trainer from doing, when I did the podcast with Dr. Katie Armstrong talking about menopause, and I had to go off and research. And as a bloke, you're naturally going, well, this is going to be awkward. I don't know. I don't know anything. Because you don't learn this stuff. And even with different cycles, menstrual cycles, you don't know it as a trainer. And actually, for a male trainer to go off, don't be arrogant and just say, what is that time of the month? It's that case of understanding which phase they're in, because it's going to affect the training.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a real eye-opener. And I suggest other PTs, if you have female clients, to go off and do the research and figure that. Because I'm still learning now. I'm learning bits you've just mentioned, but your suggestion actually having people track, there's certain apps out there, having to track is another element to that marathon they're on, and it's another stage to help them.
Yeah, definitely. And for women that are really, really into their fitness as well, it's like, I know that some people want to compete, and there's this whole other world of bodybuilding that quite frankly scares the living daylights out of me because there are women who completely lose their menstrual cycle because of overtraining and undereating, and the lengths their body has to go to perform. It's literally going into like life-saving mode. And but it's, you know, if something's going on with your cycle, it's often one of the first indications that something's off, something's wrong.
And I happen to, you know, said this in previous podcasts, but again, it's my only thing sometimes with fasting is depending on what that person's lifestyle is leading up to. You touched on it earlier, and you would know. But if someone is under high stress, you know, lack of sleep, and they're getting up first thing to fast, I think that there has to be a bit of also an element of just listen to your body. You know, like I would say, you're knackered, don't train. You know, your body needs that recovery, and that's why sleep is so important. But I also think there is that element just to be a little bit careful with the fasting element. Definitely.
And it's looking at, like you say, the stress that's already existing in your life. And exercise is a stressor. It's a good stressor, but it's a stressor. Fasting is a stressor. Starting something new, even if it is the cutting out sugar and gluten, that is going to be a stressor on your body to start with, because it's adapting to a totally new way of eating. And all of these things might be good, but they're a form of stress. And so it's taking it bit by bit. Start on maybe 3 days a week of fasting. That's still amazing if you can do that. Any kind of retraining you can do in as tiny bite-sized chunks as you feel you're able to, as long as you're doing it and you're consistent with it and you're intentional, you're going to end up with success in the long run.
And it seems to follow a theme, even just, and it's only 4 podcasts in, but it's small wins. You know, Gareth, just take action, just start doing things. You know, Luke was mentioning, just start looking at doing one thing. I always like this, do one thing and just do it well. You know, and don't tank. Don't tank earlier on and, you know, end up with adrenal fatigue and feeling cruddy because you've tried to do all these amazing things, but you've gone in there too quick. And it's again on the I know it kind of seems to contradict it, but it's like, no, don't throw in the towel because you start to feel something either. If you feel like you've got the world's worst migraine because you're on day 3 of cutting out sugar, know that is normal. And don't throw in the towel going, oh no, it's a stressor, I'm feeling some stress, so it's not happening. I don't want to be confusing with this. No, I think
like take it bit by bit, but do know that you're going to get some crappy symptoms before you feel the good stuff too. So
you're going to be cranky. So
you might hate your spouse and your kids for a good 3 weeks.
Avoid the people that irritate you. I want to talk about, so we've kind of touched on fasting. That was really helpful for people. That kind of going back to that before I forget. Fasting doesn't have to be done, in my opinion, in any particular way. If you find that your eating window is best, because I always think for women, this is what I do, is the 16-8. So I'll fast for 16 hours and my eating window is 8 hours. But actually, that fits into my day without me even noticing anymore, because I've never really been an early eater. So I break my fast at 10 and then I'll stop eating at 6, because I know that then my body is finished digesting. By the time I go to bed, I'm not interrupting melatonin production, which is, that doesn't start until you've stopped digesting your food. So you're not going to have that knock-on effect to sleep. And it doesn't, I don't even think about it anymore. So it's not like, oh crap, like, I'm my eating window, which I never want somebody to really have to feel.
beginning bit might be like, oh, which window is it that works best for my life? But once you've figured that out, it's like, forget about it. And don't, nice. If you can't do it every day, don't worry, but your body is becoming used to a pattern, which is the main thing. And it's the not doing the constant snacking as well. Like, if you think about fasting in that it's just leaving spaces between your feeding windows, like, and even if that's just breakfast, lunch and dinner, without snacking in between, you're giving your body a chance to do what it's meant to do.
That's nice. I totally agree. And it's a huge subject. And do you know what I think would be quite nice to do is maybe a little part 2 of this, to get people to, whether it's yourself or myself, is to put a little poll together with questions, because I think, and then have a Q&A session again on maybe a part 2, 30-minute. I think that'd be quite nice to do if you're interested in doing that. Because I'm already formulating lots of questions already, and I think, imagine people, well, assuming they watch this, I'm not just wasting my time. But I think they will have loads of different questions, and people will be bespoke with different things.
Yes.
What I wanted to, I think we've covered lots of things of best practices, top tips, but I think the whole thing, people have started to get a picture of things they can take away. Is there any little bits that you maybe, I'm a big believer being habits and building habits for people, a bit with training aspect, if people's, let's just say goal is to work on mobility, they have to build it within their daily habits, whether it's flicking the kettle on, whether it's ironing, whether it's sending a few emails. It's their kind of calling to say, right, well, in between, maybe set alarms where you work on flexibility, shoulder and so on, your diaphragm stretches. You have to build it within your own routines and habits. And I think
absolutely you do.
It's the same with this, isn't it? It's the same with this.
And I think I come up, most often I come up against the mental block people have because they've been conditioned throughout their life, which is totally not, that's no fault of anybody's. It's just the world we live in, and that might have happened through parents or media or whatever. But so my first top tip is just be open, be completely open to change. If what you're doing already isn't working for you, most of the people that talk to me are, they're not going to talk to me unless something isn't working for them anyway. But even when that is the case, I find it's often like the Weight Watchers and the Slimming World and the things like that as well, that people have become so conditioned into believing that they have to calorie restrict, they have to eat low fat, which is so damaging, and even things like that, when I'm trying to tell somebody fat is your friend, good fats, the right kind of fats, even that, they're like, no fat, I can't have fat.
It's a perfect system. It works so well, doesn't it? Because you go in, you have your weigh in, you get your point system. Who knows what the point systems equate to? I know that might have changed a little bit. I can eat 4 points today. What's that?
What? Oh, it's okay. My points came from a chocolate bar and, packet of crisps or whatever.
And then, they weigh in, lost weight. And then the perfect thing, which is great about all these, it's a bit like a multi-network companies, not that I'm mentioning them. But you get that community. Don't start. Don't do it.
Oh, don't set me off. I literally put out the worst thing. I'm going to say. So I think it was.
Don't mention names.
Yeah. I won't. Yeah. But it's really funny, isn't it? These things that suck us in, and we just think, oh, it's so good. It's so good. And I just encourage people to look at the back of packets as well. That's another top tip of mine. If you are being sold something as the world's next best health claim or just read what it's all about and read what's in there. Because I know it for some people it's really, really hard when you're starting off, and some of the things you can't even pronounce. Or they might put even something that's quite friendly, like if it's using stevia to sweeten something, they'll put stevia something glucosides or something like they've given it a really long name.
I always had a top tip, which someone wants O's or dextrose or anything O's ending, you just be kind of avoiding, which is always quite a nice thing. And we've always said this, you know, I think I did it months and months ago. I think I was habits of a studio coordinator, you know, jumping around classes. They're the worst nutritional people in the world, and they're nodding because they eat sugar to keep them going and coffee. But you know, I think I bought one of those packaged sandwiches, forgot all about it, come back months later. It's like, oh, that sandwich is in there. It looked the same. It had not changed.
Wow.
Yeah, scary.
Yeah.
So I was like, that definitely put me off, you know, garages, eating any of those types of things, but which we always do. I'm just going to revert back, but coming back to the reason those types of things work so well is because people get that community. They get the little hug. You've done so well. Get a sticker. I like stickers, but I don't. But it means that people then will naturally then
give you a sticker.
Thanks. But you leave going, look at what they've done, which is an amazing feeling because it puts you on the high. You go, don't need them anymore.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, comes back on, you're back. But then you go, I'll come back and join it again.
Or even worse, you know, you're paying however many pounds it is now a week to be told you put on weight, and you still continue to go back and lose your money and put on weight.
Yeah.
And then you're like, what is it? Okay. And then you might have 1 week where you've lost some, but it's like, it pains me to see.
That's the takeaway I give people, is to write down their kind of perfect week, write down what it is they do from wake up, you know, what their routines are, see if they can start implementing little changes. It's going to take time. It's not an instant fix, but you will be long-term beneficial if you know, start that longer journey rather than just keep yo-yoing all the time. I'm going to start to close bits up, but what I want to ask you is, I know it's a bookshelf behind you, but is there any podcasts you're listening to, books to reference to that you currently recommend?
So my all-time fave, who, well, this might not last forever, but she is an amazing person. Dr. Stephanie Estima. She does something called the Betty Body, where her book is called The Betty Body, and it sounds like a complete fad, but she looks at women in particular and hormones, and how to effectively reverse diet if you have been somebody that is completely ruined your metabolism by sorry. I have no idea what Alexa is saying to me.
Awesome.
I'll wait for that to finish. Hang on.
Just ordered.
Alexa, stop. She's listened to something I've said.
I'm not editing this bit because that's perfect. I'm not editing it. You've just ordered 20,000 copies of that book.
Yeah, I have, probably. That's fine. I'll dish it out to the masses for her. But no, she is fantastic, and she does have a podcast as well, which I love listening to if I'm on the treadmill occasionally. But and also I did mention it to you at the beginning. His name is Dr. William Davis, and his book is called Super Guts. And actually, the thing that he recommends in there for gut health is a certain yogurt that you can make yourself, but it's based on this one sort of probiotic, which is called L-reuteri. And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. but I take this now because I felt that it would have a massive effect after suffering with the gallbladder removal. And I know that it's quite important for me to make sure my gut health is on top form, as it is for many. So what he talks about is incredibly interesting, and he'll tell you why that particular strain is so beneficial. Nice. Amazing and so interesting. So I would really, really recommend that as well. I also listen to a lot of Dr. Jockers and Dr. Axe, because I do find that for my thyroid in particular, having a mostly ketogenic style way of eating is what works best for me. Again, it's like I know what to do now and I can just forget about it, much like the fasting. It's like once you've figured out what it is that works for you and your specific needs, just, formulate your plan and then forget about it. And, So they're two that are very interesting if you're following anything kind of low carb or keto style.
Right.
I think that's about it, actually. And I have got a huge reading list that is coming with my the qualification that I'm going back to school again. So
you got your pencil case ready?
Sorry?
Pencil case ready?
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually just nicked my daughter's, but
I think that was awesome. I think that's really, really helpful. And I think anyone listening to this has got lots of things to take away. I just want to thank you for coming on here.
Pleasure.